Hello, everyone. This is Pastor Dirk, and welcome to another session of reflection upon the commands of Christ. We're doing this as part of our series called True Love, Fact and Fiction. We're looking at these commands because we believe they are Christ's instruction to us about how to take our love game to an entirely new level. Yesterday, we began to look at a series of teachings by Jesus called the Sermon on the Mount. A series of teachings he gave outside Capernaum in this hillside where he instructed his disciples about the new mission, the new blessings, and the new provisions of his new covenant with the people. Yesterday we looked at some commands surrounding this idea of murder and how in some ways it's related to our feelings of anger and the way we call people fools and empty-headed people, the way we criticize them. And we saw this warning embedded in this command against going down a trail, kind of sliding down a slippery slope where we start to perceive people incorrectly. We no longer see them as they truly are, as God's children made in his image. We see them in an image that we portray and that we paint. And that's really the danger that Jesus is warning us against. And when we go down that danger, we fall into judgment, all the problems of judgment, all the difficulties, all the bad things that happen in relationships and in our communities because we're not following the way he ordains. So now we want to follow up on this. Jesus actually extends this command, and he makes a few other points that we want to look at today. So we go again to Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to pick up this story. It starts in verse 23, or this argument, this new section. In verse 23, it says, therefore, in other words, based upon this problem with anger and calling people fool or empty-headed person, insulting people, based upon this truth, there's a couple other truths that Jesus wants us to know. Therefore, if you are offering your gift at the altar, and there remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to them, then come and offer your gift. Now, what's Jesus telling us there? I don't know if this happened in your house, if you had brothers and sisters and maybe you're in the back of the car and one of them starts to punch you and you punch him back. And one of your parents will turn around and say, why did you hit your brother? And your response is, well, they hit me first. That's the way we live. We respond to people. We hit back. Jesus is telling us here that insofar as it is with us, as it's contained with us, we have to make sure we're living at peace with our brothers and sisters. We should leave nothing in our lives that makes us part of the problem. We can't control them, we can't control what they do, but we can very much control who we are and what we do. And he's saying, as we think about controlling our actions and not responding to people based upon some arbitrary rules that we invent, we're not allowed to do to them what they do to us. No, we have to take a different approach. We have to still be right before God. And there's a certain degree of urgency about this. He says, if you're there worshiping God at the altar and you think you may have messed up, you may have caused offense to your brother and sister, you go and you straighten it out. Make sure you're at peace with them. It's that urgent of a matter. And keep in mind now, that's a long journey. Jesus is teaching in Capernaum, which is well north of Jerusalem. In those days, there was one real altar that you could go to. That was in Jerusalem. So what Jesus is saying, look, if you're made the journey to Jerusalem and you put your altar, your sacrifice on the altar, and you remember your brother has a legitimate complaint about you, that there's something between you and your brother because of something you did, then get your butt back up there and fix it, because this has to be done before you continue your worship. If we're going to be on the right path with God, he wants us to give a sense of urgency to making sure that we're not the ones at fault. You know, relationships are very, very complicated things. And I've found over the years in my own relationships and in helping people through their struggles, usually there's two sides of every story. Nobody is usually 100% right and the other person 100% wrong. There's some variance in between. What Jesus is telling us here, if we're going to up our love game, we have to make sure that we're not the ones that are causing the problem, that our consciences are clean, that before God we've searched our hearts and we've done our best to make reconciliation. Maybe they didn't accept it, maybe they didn't receive it, but if there's anything in us that is the problem in this relationship, we've got to start with ourselves. And then he takes that to another level. Look what he says in verse 25. He says, settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you could be thrown in prison. Truly, I tell you, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. Wow. Now he's moved from talking about brothers and sisters and what you may have done to offend them. Now he's talking about your adversary. Now it gets tougher. Those people who are your enemies or are seeking to do you wrong. Here again, the principle, though, is the same. Make sure that even those people, the bad people, the adversaries that are taking advantage of you, make sure in your interchange with them, you're not the one at fault. Make sure that you're living your life so that you are not in a culpable position. I think we've all kind of seen this, maybe experienced it ourselves, that we do something wrong and the person on the other side, they just so take advantage of the mistake that was made and blow it way out of proportion. But now we can't even have a normal conversation. I've learned that in years of marriage. If I mess up, it's hard to have a conversation about the other person's responsibility if you're the one that messed up, even a little bit. What he's saying here is, especially when we deal with our adversaries in this world, our enemies in this world who are seeking to do us wrong, make sure that we're not the one at fault. This creates a whole atmosphere of trust and or distrust, mistrust, and hatred. One of the problems we have in our church today is all the bad decisions that have been made by so many people in the church, especially church leadership, that it's really our adversaries have all kinds of ammunition to turn around and fire at us and call the church bad. They have every reason in the world, it seems, not to take us seriously. Jesus is saying this is not the way it should be. Even in our relationship with our adversaries, our conduct must be above reproach. What they did does not justify us walking off in a different direction and fighting back or hitting back. We have to have our conscience clean before Christ. So when we're in these disagreeable circumstances, either with our brother or our sister or our parents or our children or our co-workers, we need to be careful that as much as it lies within us, we live at peace. We do the right thing. And this is especially true when we deal with an adverse world. Make sure that they can't go through our files and find all these things that they can begin to attack and undermine the message we seek to spread. So it's just a check on our conscience today as we continue to listen to these commands of Jesus. Double check, look in the mirror. Once again, make sure that our conduct is above reproach. And then we'll see if God doesn't take our love game to a different level and begin to help in healing these relationships, these broken relationships around us. Well, thanks again for listening to this other reflection. Come back for another reflection tomorrow on the commands of Christ as we grow together and learn the truth rather than the fiction about God's love. We'll see you then.